Hi everyone, welcome back to Visually Hidden Selects. I'm Peter O'Brien, and today I would like to talk to you about The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly from 1966, directed by Sergio Leone and starring Clint Eastwood, Lee Van Cleef, and Eli Wallach as The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. This is the third film in Leone's Dollars trilogy, and in a lot of ways it's considered to be a prequel simply because of a lot of things that happen in this film, plus the story takes place historically before the events of the previous two films. But it could also be considered its own isolated fable, as can the others, because of the overlapping characters and the overlapping actors that appear in all three films. Really, Clint Eastwood is the only through line in these particular films, and in each film his character goes by a different name. Lee Van Cleef appeared in two of these films as completely different characters, and Eli Wallach stars in this film alone. And this one really is the ultimate anti-hero archetype depiction. I mean, every single character, especially the three main characters, they all have these overlapping attributes that make them likable at times and despicable at other times. You know, nobody is 100% squeaky clean in this particular story, and each of them goes to different extremes throughout the course of the film. But Clint Eastwood as the star, especially of the previous two films, really comes across in this one. And once again, his character is going by a completely different name. In the first film, he's known as Joe. In the second film, he's known as Manco. And in the third film, he's known as Blondie. So that's part of where the marketing of The Man with No Name came from. You know, his character is always different, but he's the same character. And that's where it also ties into that kind of outlaw Western fable idea in terms of where is this going and where is he coming from. Clint's performance is very captivating on a number of different levels, but a lot of it comes to just his very, very dry delivery and his very, very clear-cut demeanor. You know, he's not giving these big speeches, and he's not going overly dramatic with any of his actions. For the most part, he just kind of glides through this film, and that's a big appeal, I think, of this film and of the character specifically. He is the essence of cool. And not only is he carried forward from the previous two films, but he is established in the beginning as the good. And so instantly, as an audience, you're rooting for him. You accept him as the good in this dynamic of characters. But really, in my opinion, this is Tuco's movie. This is Eli Wallach's movie. He has the most character development throughout the course of the film. I believe he also has the most screen time. And when you first see him, he's jumping through a plate glass window and he's established as the ugly. But throughout the course of the film, you really get to see a lot of his character and a lot of his personality develop and kind of come through in different ways. And so while he's third billed and at the end of the list, he is really kind of the star and the appeal of this particular movie. It's really his story and his adventure with Clint Eastwood. And Eli Wallach's performance is really good. I mean, you think about it, he is known for playing Mexican bandits for the most part. He was one in The Magnificent Seven. Here he is playing one. He was also playing a Mexican in How the West Was Won. But he is of Polish Jewish descent, and he grew up in Brooklyn, New York. And so if that isn't acting, I don't know what is. And I think the only reason that Clint really outshines him is because of his character's mystique. You know, this is his third film with this filmmaker and this story and this setting, this world, but we still don't know a whole lot about his character even after 3 films. We learn more about Tuco in this one film than we have about Blondie, Clint Eastwood's character, in 3 films. So I think that also just kind of casts a pretty long shadow for the audience, you know, and it just makes Clint Eastwood's character a little bit more intriguing, even though Tuco's character is pulling his own weight throughout the entire film. But of course you can't have the good without the bad, and Lee Van Cleef, he is so fantastic in this film. He was in the previous film as a completely different character, and he is basically playing the exact opposite of that character. In this film, he's known as Angel Eyes, and he is established from the very beginning in his introduction as being the bad. And even though he doesn't have as much screen time as Clint or Eli, he still has a presence throughout the entire film, and he pops up in just the right places at the right time. And there's just something about his performance that comes across exceptionally strong, where I think if he had more screen time, you might find yourself rooting for him a little bit more. He definitely stands out in this particular film. I want to say more so than For a Few Dollars More. And in that film, he's almost like a father figure and a mentor of sorts, and a guy with all the answers. But in this film, there's a sense of danger that follows Angel Eyes. And even his name, Angel Eyes, is sort of like an oxymoron, you know? It has this ironic sense to it, because really, he's like the angel of death. One thing I always thought was really cool about this film was that it's a Western, but it takes place during the Civil War. And it is actually historically accurate that they would be in this situation geographically, because there was a certain campaign for New Mexico that occurred in 1862 during the Civil War. And so historically, while this film is fiction, the backdrop is historically accurate. The story for this film is so grand that it is almost episodic in terms of its structure. It moves through these very distinct little moments that kind of all build into this one story. For example, in the beginning of the film, Clint Eastwood and Eli Wallach, they are basically running a bounty hunting scam, but throughout the course of the film, they find themselves at odds with each other, and then they wind up involved with Confederate soldiers, and they just move through these little segments of the story, building towards their ultimate goal and the final conclusion of the film. And Lee Van Cleef's character, he is also just kind of moving through these little episodes of the story that continue to build parallel and intertwining with Blondie and Tuco's story. And there is an inherent energy that comes through in this film. And part of it is from the editing, and part of it is from the cinematography. Like, the entire film, for the most part, takes place during the daytime. You know, there's very little nighttime scenes or dark scenes in this film. It is a very bright film, and so the starkness of the setting really comes through on the screen, and then coupled with the editing and, of course, the music. The music for this film was once again composed by Ennio Morricone, who had done the previous films for Sergio Leone. And it really is a high watermark, not only for this film series, but the Western genre in general. You know, the theme for The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly and Ecstasy of Gold, those two pieces of music are so synonymous with the genre that it has kind of replaced everything that came before it and overshadowed anything that came after it. And it really all comes together in the editing. There are certain scenes and sequences in this film that play out just fine, and then there are other scenes and sequences that are just next level filmmaking and visual storytelling. And I think one thing that really sets this film apart from other Westerns is that anti-hero character element. You know, prior to these films, it was always a sense of moral justice involved in the characters. And after the Dollars trilogy, it really kind of changed the landscape of the West in terms of what the characters could be and how they could be perceived. You know, they could be good, they could be bad, and they could be ugly, all at the same time. And that's really what comes across in this film, and that, I think, is its enduring legacy, is that there are flaws in everyone. So that's it for The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I really hope you like this recommendation, and please don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future selections. If you do watch The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, please leave us a comment and let us know what you think of the film. We will be discussing it at length on the next Visually Hidden Selects podcast, so be sure to tune into that. And until next time, see ya.